Excellent. You guys, we have Jared Rodman with us today. He is not only an incredible leader. I had the privilege of working at his company for a while, and it was absolutely one of my best experiences. But he dedicated 11 years building one of Silicon Slope's early unicorn companies, Weave, and he has since started the entrepreneurial journey over again as the co-founder of his new company, Taabl. So give a warm welcome to Jared Rodman.
And I get the comfy blue couch.
Yes, you get the comfy blue couch.
Awesome.
Jared, welcome. Thanks for being with us.
Of course. No, it's a pleasure. And hopefully what I have to say is of at least a little bit of value. Ultimately, it's a lot of what not to do. So.
Well, we all need to know that as well.
Yeah.
Get us started with just a little bit about you. Where did your entrepreneurial spirit come from? Tell us your background.
Great question. My brother and I were co-founders at Weave together, and I don't know what it is about, maybe credit goes to our parents. They instilled at a very early age in us that if we wanted something, you got to work for it. I think there were multiple reasons for that. We grew up in a very lower middle class family in Oregon, and my dad did run his own business, but as a general contractor, but kept it intentionally very small. And so I remember at a young age, our parents buying a gallon of milk and powdered milk and turning 1 into 3. And so they instilled a sense of grit. There's one memory that my brother and I have talked about often where we didn't have money. This was probably when I was about 6, so my brother would have been 8 or so. We didn't have money for Christmas to buy each other gifts. So my dad took us out into the woods with 22 rifles. In hindsight, probably not the best thing, but we shot mistletoe down from trees. And we then took it back, bundled it up, went on the street corner and sold it. And we sold that mistletoe very quickly and were able to actually purchase gifts for each other that Christmas. So I think that's kind of where it began was if we want something, there's a solution, and it may not be easy, but you can work towards it. So.
And your brother was also involved in Weave as well, in the founding of Weave. So
he's the uglier and not as cool one. He likes to post a lot online, and he does an incredible job at it. So many of you have probably seen some of his LinkedIn posts. But yeah, he's definitely my inspiration and my best friend. So
tell us about the journey you two took in founding Weave. Where did the idea come from?
So credit goes to Brandon for that. I'm not necessarily an idea guy. I'm more of what he calls the pessimist, although I'm a realist. He has these crazy ambitions, and I'm the one to say, okay, haha, funny. Now let's talk about how it actually will work. And I think there's a fine balance always between that crazy ambition and then when the rubber meets the road and how it actually needs to be executed upon. But really, it started with door-to-door sales. I know many of you have probably participated in that in some fashion here in Utah. And it was really from that door-to-door mentality of my brother being a couple years older, he had sucked me into it, and him seeing, okay, I want to get out of this, but I don't know if I can work for somebody. He had been autonomous, and he had this sense of kind of drive in him. And so he had heard of an idea through a friend of a friend about scheduling patients that were overdue for a cleaning and a checkup. And on the surface, it's like, okay, that sounds not cool at all. What you're going to call and, hey, Bree, you're overdue for a cleaning and a checkup. I just wanted to help get you in. I have this time or this time. Which one works for you? But that's how Weave began. It started as a call center. So this was back in 2008. And the context around it was pretty simple. Our mom was a dental hygienist, so we understood dental. Brandon wanted to be a dentist, shadowed a couple different people, and then ran the other way. And it was built a little bit into us, but that idea of helping schedule and facilitate the business end made sense. So we built a call center. And from '08 until 2011, that's really how we operated. It was generating revenue, but wasn't really where our passion was. What we learned, though, was we learned a lot about our users. We learned that dentists are small business owners. They know a lot about working in your mouth, but they don't know a lot about business. And saw a huge opportunity that we ran into, which was, as we're calling and trying to schedule people, we didn't have the info we needed. There were other people in the household that needed to be scheduled. And we thought, okay, if we could pull up this information, that'd be really helpful. And then as we progressed further and further, we thought, let's automate this dialer. Let's make it faster, more efficient. We were really building a phone system. And as we came across some issues, we thought, well, why don't we just build the rest of the phone system and give it to the staff? And that's where the kind of origin of Weave began. It was a phone system on steroids.
And it does work well. I actually did get a text from my dentist recently with that same reminder, and I asked them if they use Weave, and they do. And it works well, and I got my teeth cleaned, so thank
Good
you for that. I attribute that to you.
Yep,
Appreciate
that was
it.
solely you're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
You're welcome.
Talk to us about the pivotal moments. I'm sure Weave was such a journey from the beginning stages that you just mentioned up until where it is now, right? And the 11 years that you dedicated to that. What were the pivotal moments in that journey?
You look back, and a lot of the pivotal moments are the hard moments. And that's the thing is, as I sit up here, I think of myself as, oh man, I've made so many mistakes, as opposed to looking at any sense of success. And so I'd say the first pivotal moment for us was realizing that the scheduling service was not going to work the way that we wanted to. And it's a little cliche. A lot of people will talk about how their company pivots, and that's where the success came from. And it's all rooted in this core concept of talk to your users, and something that we believe in, that Y Combinator preaches, which is build something people want. And so having that mentality for us, we saw that new opportunity. And so that pivotal moment from being a call center and strictly just a service to more of a SaaS solution was a huge pivotal moment for us. It wasn't without problems. I mean, I still have PTSD about phone systems going down. If anybody's thinking about going into anything RTP, real-time protocol, anything VoIP, run the other way. It's hairy. And so in hindsight, I don't think there was any other way, but that was a huge pivotal moment, switching from the service to providing that software component. I would say the next would be getting into Y Combinator. For those of you that are unaware, something like RevRoad, as far as I knew, did not exist. And I don't think all of you understand what a blessing it is. As I was sitting back and thinking, I look at RevRoad as I'm going bowling and I suck. Let's put up the bumper lanes, and have somebody there to help kind of guide and direct. Super cool. And so for us, we were making mistake after mistake after mistake. And a lot of people don't know this. We had applied to a group called 500 Startups. I don't know if anyone here is familiar with that incubator. And my brother and I interviewed, and didn't get in. And we came back a little frustrated. And Clint Berry, our CTO co-founder at Weave, was kind of like, yeah, I thought that would happen. And then my brother said, I'm going to apply to YC. And Clint laughed because he was, very, very familiar with Hacker News and YC being one of the more predominant incubators. He said, if you can't get into 500 startups, I don't know if you, yeah, whatever. And my brother, being as ambitious as he was, he said, yeah, let's try it. We were fortunate enough to get an interview, went on site and notified that day that we got in. And it was very humbling. we were able to immerse ourselves in what at the time I don't feel existed within the Utah ecosystem as it does today, which is this hyper growth mentality that you can obtain things that may not feel within your grasp. We were able to get some incredible mentors as well as raise a round of funding and kind of transition there. And so I would say that would be pivotal point 2. And then 3, if I were to say it's hammering down our culture. I think I may have said something different prior, but as I've thought about it more, is nailing down our culture and really being true to ourselves and hiring better and smarter people than ourselves. Realizing that we're all just old children. My brother, Clint, and myself would often sit in a room and say, "Do you know what you're doing?" Kind of, but not really. And we would all agree, okay, let's bring on some people that may have made mistakes that we're likely to make, and trust them to help lead and guide us. So,
I just want to second that. I think Weave really did have one of the best company cultures I've ever experienced, and I worked at Weave as a sales rep.
Hardest position in the company.
Listen, the position was not for me. It was not.
Not for me
But
either.
the company was great, and the culture was great, and I felt valued and appreciated. And so I really respect the way that the culture started, and you got it all the way through to even entry-level positions.
That's good.
So to you, hat off. But if you could go back now and do anything differently, what would you do different?
I would love to look back and say, I wish this, I wish that. I think one thing that I've learned, and that's probably a better way I would phrase it, because I feel eternally grateful for everything that happened at Weave. And I think it would be about understanding when you take investment funds, what does that mean? And I'm talking about institutional funds. There are a lot of other creative ways, for example, RevRoad, where the situation is very, very different. It's equity for help. Whereas when you're raising venture capital, the sole purpose of that money is to make more money. And there are a lot of things that we didn't fully understand, and expectations, and how to manage relationships that, looking back now, I'm much more aware of, and much more hesitant to take money, and much more careful about the terms around that money. And so that would probably be the learning that I would say. But looking back and changing anything, I mean, that's such a hard question to answer.
Yeah. Sure. We chatted earlier a little bit about how to navigate and maintain relationships with investors and board members. What tips would you give to entrepreneurs on how to maintain these relationships and keep them healthy?
Great question. To take a step back before answering that, I would say first, don't take money if you don't have to. I think this idea of let's raise money, let's grow, it's the hype. It's the, I have to raise money or else. And part of it, I think if a lot of us are honest with ourselves, it's this idea of, I made it, and look at what I've done. My company is now worth X. No, it's not. Your company is valued at that, but you have to work into that valuation. And investors are expecting that. Statistically, even raising a round of funding, you're going to fail. And I look at it as time is your currency. And so this time around with Taabl, we're doing things very, very differently in that if anybody's heard of the term default alive from kind of an equity and management standpoint, we look at our cash burn as we're never going to raise another round of funding, and we're either going to grow slow or we can put money on the fire to grow a little faster, but that's not going to dictate our success. And so as long as we're, in a way, steady Eddie and we're taking shots at goal, calculated, the round of funding is more about facilitating and less about make or break. And so the first thing to assess is, why do you need a round of funding? So strongly question that, because all that it's going to do is puts you in a pressure cooker. And there's a ticking time bomb that these investors are going to expect a return, whether that's with you at the company or not. So beyond that, what I would love to communicate here is there are incredible investors out there. But when, talking with Bree, it was, what have I learned and how would I encourage others to look at that funding? If your company's in a good position, you've been able to either have an incredible idea, incredible team, ideally get some sense of market traction, because an idea and team is only as good as people actually wanting the product. So if you do take on some money, try to make it to your terms as best you can. If somebody's going to throw in some extra provisions like participating preferred, or these things that maybe we haven't heard of yet, have somebody look over it, because you can get screwed over in some of the details. And there's nothing more important than the passion that a founder has for their product, and you do not want to kill that. So first, make sure that as best you can, you dictate the terms of the deal. And maybe it's that if you are creating a board, that you and co-founders own the board. If that's not the case, then there's an independent that's decided by the co-founding team or the common shares. And that's really, really important. Second, manage the board intentionally. And what I mean there is, you should never have a board meeting where you are presenting new information. If that is the case, you're already getting behind. So what I mean is, have individual meetings with each of the board members or each of the board observers, whoever's going to be in the meeting beforehand. Get their feedback and make sure that you're all on the same page, so that when you're in a board meeting, there are no surprises. We had a board member that, I love the saying, said, surprises are for birthdays, not board meetings. And it's true. You don't want to go into a board meeting and say, well, just wanted to let everyone know that we're running out of money. It's not going to look good on the founding team if that's the situation. Instead, you have the conversations with each individually and say, I would love your help in being creative around this. What are you thinking? So that in the board meeting, it's more about, so I've talked with you each individually about our burn rate. Here's what we're doing to attack that. And here's our plan, et cetera. So you're managing that. And then lastly is, early on, make sure you lean on your board. I know that's a little counterintuitive to what I've said, but your early board members are going to be your biggest advocates. They're investing at an earlier stage, and there are incredible people out there that have very good intentions. As you get later on, I remember at Weave, our Series D, they didn't even take a board seat, and they invested a lot of money. And so it was the early investors and early board members that build those relationships, lean on for intros, as well as just ask, what are you guys wanting to see in these board meetings? So that's kind of how I would look at it.
And now you are co-founder of Taabl. Tell us about Taabl. Where did the idea come from? How did you get involved, and what are you excited about?
As I said, I'm not an idea guy. But it was actually a very good friend and coworker of ours. Her name is Loren, and she worked closely with the executive team. She was dating somebody at the time, Sean, who attended a lot of the offsites with us. And Sean and I just clicked, got along really, really well. Sean and Loren are now married, have their first child. And when I left Weave, Sean was finishing his MBA at BYU, and had, just from personal experiences, he was able to pay for his MBA because of a stock plan he participated in at another company. and it changed his life. And so he was very, very passionate about it. And as he was getting his MBA, did a lot of research and found that most people don't participate in their 401k or their stock plan. Within public entities, there are what are called employee stock purchase plans. If anybody's worked at a public company and understands an ESPP, it's basically free money. You get to buy that company's stock at a discount. And nationally, the participation rates are 30 to 35%. And those 30 to 35% of people participating, they're the ones that already have money. They're able to participate. Those that aren't, they can't afford a payroll deduction. So what Taabl is, we come in and we front the money so that those that aren't able to participate can. And then when the stock is realized, there's an extra upside. We take a small little fee off of that. So the employee keeps their paycheck, but they get extra stock, which feels like for free. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to democratize access to financial benefits. So.
For Taabl.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are you learning your second time around as a company founder? What are you learning now that you're back in the early stages?
Yeah. First, that I love it. It's different every day. Second, it's not easier the second time around necessarily. And maybe I had this misconceived notion of, oh, I learned a lot at Weave, and now I'll just be able to jump right in. This will be easy. No, it's just as difficult. I think specifically with Taabl, we are trying to change the mentality around benefits. That benefits are, yes, offered, but that's not enough. Companies need to help facilitate participation in benefits to actually help people. And a lot of companies right now are saying, yeah, but that'll cost us more. We're like, yeah, but it's the right thing to do. And so we have early adopters that are saying, oh gosh, this is huge, a differentiator, benefit assistance or benefit equality. But what we found is we're getting a lot of people saying, I like it, but I don't want to be the first one. And I'm sure many of you have experienced that in your own endeavors. Talk to your users, and our end users, which are the employees, they love it. And why? Because they push a button, they get free stock or they get free money. And so it's not as easy as I thought breaking into a new market, but it's just as fun. So patience is key and understanding that it's a roller coaster. You're going to have days where you're on top of the world and other days you feel like, what a dumb idea. What am I doing? And you have to just find a level of a zen, so to speak, because it's important.
And I think for a lot of people, the ways that we can find that zen or that place to unwind is with family a lot of times.
Yes.
And you're married and you have 3 kids?
3 awesome kids. They are my world.
How do you do it all? How do you build these massive companies and start all over again while filling that role and being there when you want to?
I bought a separate house. I don't see my family. No, I'm kidding.
I was like, wrong question. Okay.
No, family first. So what's been really interesting, my motivators around Weave were my brother. There's nothing more important to me than family. And it scared the crap out of our mom because she's like, oh, what if they fight? What if there's a divide? And my brother and I are best friends. And so, yes, we had our moments, but in the end, it was family first. And that's something that I remain true to, which is I will prioritize family functions before I will work. Does that mean that the company won't be successful? No. It means maybe I'm going to 8 o'clock at night, as I'm watching an NBA game or something, I'll get on my computer and get some stuff done. My wife is the better half, of course, and she's willing to support me in that. Also, I think she's just like tired from the kids and is like, don't talk to me. So yeah, get on your computer. But without that family support, I don't think I'd have the motivators that drive me. And so I do everything for my family. And I think that's how it should be. We should find where we're passionate and make sure that's where we're focusing, as opposed to this idea of hustle culture that it tends to cut out those things that are important in our lives, because it's not this idea of not being able to have your cake and eat it too. It's time management. It's putting what's important first and making sure that you do carve out the necessary time to get other things done, but at what cost?
As you reflect on your career, what would you say is one of the greatest lessons that you've learned so far?
I mentioned it earlier. There are a couple things that I kind of grab from other people and I hang on to because they resonate really strong with me. One of which was a book I read by Reid Hoffman, which is, we are all, as individual people, we want to be the superheroes of our own story. And when I read that and really thought about it, I found it so interesting, and we imbued that into our culture. I would tell people all the time when we hire them at Weave that, look, here's the position. It's kind of hard. Let me tell you the good and the bad. But I'm here for you to talk anytime. And I understand that the amount of time you're putting in here is more on the company than it is you. We have to prove every single day that this is the place you want to choose to be. And part of that is acknowledging your journey. Where are you wanting to go? How long are you going to be here? Let's help you transition either into other roles or learn what you need to learn so that you can just pivot off and fly. So that was the first little bit that I learned and I've hung on to. And the second bit I've already mentioned, which if anybody here listens to Joe Rogan, this is from him. We're all just old children. And I love that idea because it's given me a lot of perspective. It's even with my parents, as I've gotten older and now I've had kids, it was this earth-shattering moment when I realized, oh, my parents don't have it figured out. Yikes. You know, because I have them on this pedestal, and I found there was a moment where I was, not that they were, imploding by any means, but they were having some disagreements. They were, arguing about some stuff, and I had to talk to my mom and say, hey, Mom, have you looked at it from this perspective? She's like, you're right. And I think that's what has also helped me forgive. That's what's helped me better understand that idea of fail quickly, because we are all human and we make mistakes. That's okay. It's about being collective in mind and helping lift others up and achieve that superhero kind of trajectory that they're wanting in their lives.
So you didn't take much of a break between Weave and Taabl.
I thought I would, but I didn't. No.
But you're back in it. And as you are, what additional opportunities do you see for entrepreneurs?
Oh, goodness. Are you talking about from a product perspective, or I guess maybe
whichever comes to your mind first?
Okay, so what additional opportunities am I seeing for entrepreneurs? I think there's a better support network these days, and a lot of it's about what do you actually want. I've talked to a lot of people that will reach out and say, hey, I just want to chat, and I'm always open to that. And sometimes people are shooting for this billion-dollar unicorn, and I will challenge them to a degree, and I'll say, why? And then what? Why? And then what? And I'll just keep asking these questions to really get at the heart of what is their motivator. Is it inflated ego? Hey, that can be a good motivator sometimes. Is it financial freedom? Is it job creation? Is it just because you love this product so much and you want it in people's hands? And so I think the especially Utah ecosystem continues to grow and improve. And I think that idea and the networks that are being created are a much better facilitator for people to be successful. I will always still challenge, to what end though? Why? And then what? Because there is nothing wrong with having a profitable business that has 8 employees, and you're able to take care of your family. And it's this misnomer around, well, I have to be this type of a company. Maybe not. Maybe, but maybe not. So just think about why you want what you want, and then utilize these great systems in place. Talk to people, talk to your users, and as I stated before, build something people want.
Thank you. We are going to open it up for audience questions. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. We will bring a microphone to you. And please remember to hold the microphone in front of your face so our friends online can hear you.
Let me preface, if there's any questions coming from online from anyone named Brandon, he also goes by the handle Rodzilla, just delete them, okay?
Question.
Yeah.
Love what you said, and the very last part is actually very mind-blowing, even though it's as easy as it sounds. Why and what next, right? So as we see a lot of times, and thanks to your brother, he's contributing to this very inspiring post on LinkedIn, but more often than not, you see more posts about how much we raised, that whole, we need to be this type of company in order to arrive. So as a person who's doing this not for financial reason, like say you're good, you don't do this for money, you do this to solve the problem, how do you stay motivated and be that almost like a true outlier culture, right? You're doing this because you're an outlier, you believe in something, you know your why, you know your what next, but at the same time, everybody's like, hey, look, we just did this, we just raised this money, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of motivating sometimes to see that, to make you feel like, oh crap, I just barely did nothing. But how do you get out of that mindset to continue to be the outlier?
You are summarizing social media at its finest.
Thank you.
So, sorry everyone, I'm not the biggest social media fan. Why? Because everyone puts their best lives out there, and then we're all sitting there judging ourselves and saying, oh, how come they're doing X, Y, or Z? Am I not good enough? And so the only social media account I have a Facebook from years ago. I don't even know the password. I have not been on, and I know there's probably some cool password recovery thing, but LinkedIn is the one that I do use for business purposes. And I see those messages all the time. They have their 10 minutes of fame, what have you, and then you don't hear anything. It's not until maybe they raise again, or maybe. So as it's easier said than done, don't get caught up in the who's who, this, that. I would stay hyper-focused, head down, and talk to your users. You are going to get more satisfaction from your user base than you will anybody else. There is, of course, something just organic in all of us that wants to be seen, heard, and put on a pedestal. And it's, we just have to understand the why. Like, for example, me being here, I have this core just desire to help people as much as I can. And legitimately, if anybody here wants to message on LinkedIn, have a conversation, totally, I'll schedule it. I have no problem. And I think some people are surprised sometimes when I'm like, no, this is what I love to do. I love to help people. And that's why I attach to Taabl, because the overall vision is helping people. And I'll be there as long as it takes to make sure that we can execute on that. Or at least somebody does. If it's not Taabl, then maybe there's another company that's able to execute on the mission. And I'd still consider that a win. So ultimately, keep your head down, talk to your users, and ignore the headlines, just like you would any negativity coming from other headlines. So.
So I'm intrigued by you working with your brother, because I have 5 brothers. And so I was wondering if you could, don't need to go into the nitty-gritty details, but if you could tell us about like the biggest kind of disagreement you had with your founding team and how that was resolved and what that looked like?
It was yesterday. No. No, my brother and I, so I've had people ask, how is it working with your brother? And then, and they're more asking from kind of a similar point, which is, I'm thinking of working with my family. The one thing, and this is a cliche Google, disagree and commit type philosophy. In closed rooms, yes, I disagree all the time. And jokingly, we would call me Brandon was the optimist, Clint was the technical guy, and I was the pessimist, which I don't think I'm a pessimist. I was just telling Brandon, stupid idea, and at the core, we got along great. We had our moments, for sure. I remember there being times he was always harder on me than other people, and sometimes that would come out in a board, not a board meeting, but in an executive meeting. And I'd call him out after the fact, not in the moment, but after the fact. And the clear separator there was, yes, we're brothers, but in a work setting, he's the CEO. And so as much as I may disagree, once we left that room, I was fully committed. And I would go to war for him because I love him. And so as I ever encourage family, friends to work together, it's that question of, well, first, what's the title dynamic? And are people okay with that? Because when it comes push to shove, the CEO is going to make the decision. Is that going to be a problem? And are you putting family first? Meaning, if it meant that I had to walk away to maintain the relationship, I would have. Because again, there's nothing more important than family. So that's my perspective for what it's worth. Granted, each family dynamic's different, but those conversations need to be had. And we had those. We had the what ifs. And of course, it was always me leaving, not him. Yeah, it worked. Great question, though.
Right here. Yeah, thanks for everything so far. You've alluded a few times to the importance of culture.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering if you have any tips on establishing culture when it's just you and, say, a co-founder. So, planting the seeds of culture, if you will.
So I've been thinking a lot about this, actually, and trying to put together what's in my head onto some sort of a, whether it's slide deck or something, just to say, hey, these are my thoughts. And so stay tuned. It might take a week, a year. I have no idea. But my first thought around that is it has to be authentic. That was one of the interesting things as Brandon, Clint, and I, the three of us, all left Weave, and they tried to hang on to the culture. It, from what I heard, did not work out well because the three that we had mascots. It was hungry, creative, and caring. And we had a hungry bear, a creative gorilla, and then I didn't get to pick mine. I was the caring sloth. I blame Brandon, my brother, for that. He thought it was funny. But we were clear in who we are and very transparent and authentic. And all of us had those skill sets, but each one of us had one of those stronger than the other. So my brother is honestly crazy ambitious, and he will be successful because there's no other outcome for him. And I love that hunger in him, and there's part of me that misses working with him. And there's a day that we'll work together again, for sure. And then Clint, he's an engineer. He taught himself how to code, and he is the type that would always just say, oh, no, there's always a way to build it. It may not look pretty, but yeah, we can figure that out. So immensely creative. And then for me, I just have this sense of care that can sometimes be to a fault. But I'm always hyper-analyzing and thinking, and I would be the one to often sit down and just say, hey, how's it going? And so I think that's where you start, is where are those core competencies? And it may be that, for example, Sean and I, we operate a little different with Taabl. Is hunger part of our core attribute? No, I think it's more thoughtfulness. Sean is built differently than Brandon. And for us to say we're hungry, it would be disingenuous. And so it starts with that, the team saying, this is really what drives us, what motivates us, and then extrapolating. We made it very clear that this is who we hire. This is also, for lack of these qualities, sometimes who we have to part ways with. And so we'd obviously hire for strengths, not weaknesses or lack of weaknesses. But once we're able to really establish that core set, it made things a whole lot easier. So that would be my recommended first step.
Any other questions?
This has been awesome, Jared. Thank you. I love that you bring a great sense of humor along with the great principles you're teaching. I have a question that I'm hoping you can just share a little more about your experience with. You knew how to start this company. You guys relied on other people to help you grow it. How did you know when it was time to go? And how did you frame and orchestrate that? You know what I mean?
How transparent do you guys want me to be here?
As transparent as you.
Because I'm a very transparent
please
person.
do.
As transparent as you can.
I think I can be very. I think I can say what I need to say, and this might shock a lot of you. I was fired. I was fired from Weave, and so was my brother. Clint was the only one out of the three that left on his own accord. And when I talk about managing board dynamics, I mean it. Our company was doubling in revenue, very successful. And what was perceived as an issue was a separation of power within the executive team and co-founding team. And our board of directors looked at that as a potential risk. It's interesting, as a company becomes more and more successful, the likelihood of the CEO and co-founding team being replaced increases. That's just something to think about. So we raised way too much money and gave up a lot of control. And I remember the shock for all three, Brandon, Clint, and I. And I won't go into heavy details surrounding, but we were looking to make some changes internally on the Weave team. And the board came back and said, no, we don't agree with that. Instead, Brandon, we want you to fire your brother. And keep in mind, this was right after a board meeting where all of the metrics I owned were around customer retention, and they were world class. And we literally had board observers say, no, like this area, you guys are killing it. So I met with one of the investors after, and it was just that. It was strategic. It wasn't personal. That's what they said. For me, it was. And so that idea of, oh, it's not personal, it's business, bull crap. It's always personal, you know, especially when it's your baby. And so being radically candid with you all, that's really what I mean when it changed. And I'm not afraid to say that I was canned. And fortunately, they gave me a severance and some stock. And then, you know, being a little burned, I was like, well, heck, I'm going to go on the secondary market and sell some of my stock. And in hindsight, I'm super happy because Weave went public. And then if anybody's seen the stock, it's so I'm looking at it now like I feel super lucky. Am I vindictive? No, not at all. Why? Because I choose not to be. And I choose to be grateful. And when I left, I had a variety of emotions, of course. I took some time to be angry, but then I decided to you know, so to speak, count my blessings and to choose to be happy. And now I look at anything that happened with that idea of we're all just old children. We're trying to figure things out, and I'm okay with it. So probably not the answer you were looking for, but it's the truth.
The truth is always the right answer, and we are all old children. So for our final question, what is something fun that your success has allowed you to do?
Oh, goodness. Talk to a lot of really cool people. By nature, I'm an introvert. So I am the type that I'd rather sit in the back and, just kind of chill. And so will you find me coming out and, hey, how are you? No, but I'm incredibly receptive. And again, that core of me, I'd love nothing more than to help. But being able to speak like this, it gets me outside of, I enjoy it, but it's not something that I would ever have thought I would have pursued or been invited to. So that's the first. Second, no question, travel. My wife and I have this thing where until COVID hit, every year we wanted to take one of our family members and so our siblings and spouses on a really cool trip. And part of it is, it might be that they would have never had this opportunity themselves. We go all out. It's a blast. But it's also getting to know them because, as I've stated, at the end of the day, nothing more important than family. And so we've been able to do that a couple times, and we've had plans to do it again, and it's now a question of, well, what is open, what's not, that kind of thing. But travel, so fun.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jared. We have a present for you. One last thank you for Jared, everybody.
Thanks.